I do think that knowing how ingrained the language learning, language teaching industry is in many countries, I think there is hope. Hello, everybody, and welcome back once again. And I have a question for you. Yes, you. I'm asking you. Did you listen to my last podcast from last week? Or did you watch the podcast from last week? Because if you did, and thank you if you did, then you'll know that I'm recording this podcast just after I recorded last week's podcast. And I've got to begin by telling you a little story once again. And I had a moment of panic because I finished recording the podcast from last week related to crime, and I felt really good about it. I stopped recording and I actually said, "Ooh, that was a good one. That felt good. It flowed really well." So I recorded a quick video to upload to Instagram to tell people to leave a 5-star review on Spotify or like the video on YouTube. And as that was happening, I noticed that the program, the software I use to record this podcast, which is called Riverside, stopped working. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, it wasn't responding. And at that moment, I was like, no, I'm going to have to record that all over again. I'm going to have to say everything all over again for an entire hour. So I was like, no, please work. And I had to reboot my computer. And when I rebooted it, luckily, thank God, I noticed that the file was there. It had not been lost. So I breathed a big sigh of relief. I was so relieved. But anyway, that's a little story to begin this week's podcast. And as you will have noticed from the thumbnail, this podcast is related to the news. It's related to some different interesting news articles using a cool website that I've used before, which is called Breaking News English. And sometimes I use this website in class with my students to discuss interesting news articles without going into too much detail and making it a little bit easier and more approachable for students. So I have chosen 3 news articles that I have already discussed with the British English Immersion Club this week. So if you want to join my classes, as always, I will leave a link in the description. And I think you're going to like these articles. So what we're going to do is I'm going to read the article, and then I'm going to give my thoughts. I'm going to give my opinions. And I want you to think about your opinion. And if you have any strong opinions and you'd like to share them with me, you can leave a little comment, or if not, just like the video. So thank you so much in advance. And, well, you probably know by now, but my name's Lewis. I'm from the north of England, but I live in Brussels. I live near the city centre of Brussels. And that being said, in the background, right now, I can hear an alarm. Which is funny, because last week we were speaking all about crime. Now, I hope a crime hasn't been committed around my neighbourhood, but literally, the alarm just started going off. It stopped. Because if you listened 2 weeks ago to the episode related to animals, and you listened all the way to the end, you'll have noticed that there was a demonstration as well, which put me off a little bit. When I say it put me off, I mean that it distracted me. Because it's hard to think clearly and improvise and continue speaking for 45 minutes without having a clear script. But that's the way I like to do this podcast. I like to think on my feet, and I like to use a little bit of a plan and a structure, but at the same time, I just keep speaking. I don't really edit this podcast, so it sounds natural. It sounds authentic, and it sounds real. Of course, I speak slowly, because that way I think this podcast is more useful for intermediate learners or even upper intermediate learners, because we don't need to speak quickly all the time. There are moments when I speak really quickly, but the vast majority of the time, when I'm teaching, when I'm chatting with my mates, when I'm calling my mum or dad, I'm not speaking that quickly. Maybe my brain just doesn't think that quickly, so it's hard to send those messages from my brain to my mouth to produce speech. Maybe that's it. But yeah, if you feel like this podcast is a little bit too slow for you, then you can always speed it up. You can change the speed of reproduction on YouTube or Spotify. And if you feel like I'm too slow for you, you can speed me up. But anyway, let's get started and begin with our first article, our first piece of news. And I've got 3 different ones that I've already chosen, but I'm not sure which to begin with. I can't make my mind up. Make your mind up means make a decision. I can't make my mind up. I can't make up my mind. I can't choose. I can't decide. So let's do it at random. Let's see. Okay, I know which one I'm going to kick off with. And it's very related to learning English. So, I don't want to give anything away just yet. I don't want to reveal too much just yet. And let me read it. The title is Real-Time Translation Could End Need to Learn Languages. Uh-oh. Maybe my job is in danger. My job is under threat. Because this headline states that real-time translation could end the need to learn languages. Let's hear exactly what this article has to say on the topic, and feel free to watch me and read at the same time, or it's up to you, of course. You can just listen to me and, well, take in the information at the same time. Here goes. New technology from Apple Cloud transform language learning and global communication. The tech giant says its new AirPods Pro 3 earbuds can translate foreign languages in people's ears in real time. In addition, transcripts of conversations will automatically appear on the screens of users' devices. This could have major repercussions for the language teaching industry. Instant translation could deter people from investing the time and financial outlay required to learn another language. The technology is another example of the impact AI could have on jobs. Many teachers will be concerned about how real-time translation might affect their industry and their future. Apple wrote on its website that its AirPods Pro 3 would help people communicate seamlessly in other languages. It added, "For those moments when a language barrier gets in the way, live translation can help users communicate across select languages when messaging or speaking." The technology is another example of science fiction becoming science fact. For the past century, people have foretold novel ways to translate languages in real time. The 1979 novel, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, envisioned a fictional babblefish. that is put in one's ear to understand foreign tongues. The Japanese manga and anime character Doraemon used a special jelly to magically translate any language. So, that's it. That's the article. And you may have seen different videos, different posts, different adverts and promotion from industry leaders or language learning professionals, language teaching professionals even, who have been discussing the impact of this new technology. Because, of course, it is a little bit frightening. It's quite scary for people like me who work in the language teaching industry. And I've always worked in this industry. And since I've been working in this industry, there's always been this threat, this danger, this possibility that we won't be needed in the future and we will be replaced because adults in particular will just use earpods, or they will use other devices, perhaps different glasses like the Meta Ray-Ban glasses, in order to translate from their mother tongue to their target language. And in that case, if we think about it from the point of view of ROI, return on investment, if companies are paying their employees to learn languages perfectly for weeks, months, and years, and they don't reach perfection, they don't reach fluency, then from the company's point of view, it's a waste of money. In a similar way, if you are paying out of your own pocket to attend language classes, but you don't notice any improvement or you don't have fun in class, then again, you could argue that it is a waste of money. When you have in your hand or you have in your ears a device that will translate everything. Now, the downside of this, the disadvantage of this, is that people might accuse you of being lazy. And I don't think you will impress other people that much if you're just using technology to do the hard work for you. You haven't sacrificed any of your time. You haven't made an effort to understand another person's language. And this isn't a very good look. It can have a long-lasting impact on your personal reputation. But to be honest, this is what most English speakers do anyway. Most Brits, Americans, Aussies, Kiwis, South Africans, if you are not born into a culture and a family where, let's say, your dad is Argentinian and your mom is Chinese, if both of your parents were born and raised only speaking English, it's highly likely that you'll never make the effort to learn a proper foreign language. You'll never make the effort to actually try to become fluent in another language. Most of my friends, they don't do it. My family, they don't do it. English native speakers are very lazy. And it's like we are demanding other people learn our language to be able to communicate with us, do business, travel, and so on and so forth, when we're not doing anything similar. We're not making the same effort. So I think that English native speakers will, well, use this technology quite a lot, because if they're not making the effort at the moment to learn a foreign language, then they're definitely not going to do it in the future when everything gets easier and easier, because technology can take over most of these mundane, boring things that us as human beings don't want to do. We can't be bothered to do them. But I do think that knowing how ingrained the language learning, language teaching industry is in many countries, I think there is hope for teachers like myself, because there will always be some people who want to continue to learn a language, to become fluent in a language, and these people who do make the effort, or who are taught when they're really, really young, they will be looked up to, they will be admired, and they will be respected because you've made the effort and you can have a seamless conversation with other people in their language. And I do think there will be a big difference between the so-called lazy people who use these earbuds for real-time translation, and on the other hand, people who actually try, dedicate time, commit time, and become fluent through conversation. But what do you think? Do you think this will become normal practice? Do you think that most people will actually just use technology as a means of communication and translation? I'm not sure, you know? We will find out in the future. I don't know what's going to happen, but I would like to think that the advances in technology and in artificial intelligence to translate different languages, I want to believe that people will still want to study English. Because if not, my future may be at risk. My job may be at risk. I sure hope not, but anything could happen. And in that case, all I have to do is adapt, and maybe I'll become, I don't know, a cleaner. I'll become a school teacher. Or maybe I'll become a footballer. I wish. So that is the first article. Now, let me just recap a couple of words and phrases from that article. And I'm going to share my screen and just go over a few of the more advanced words. Here we have instant translation could deter people from investing the time and financial outlay required to learn another language. To deter is like to prevent someone from wanting to do something. Seeing that smoking causes cancer, that deters me from wanting to smoke. It puts me off wanting to smoke. Another example is, for example, where was it? I think I can find it. Here it is. For the past century, people have foretold novel ways to translate languages in real time. To foretell is to predict. And like tell, told, told, foretell has the same conjugation. So foretell, foretold, foretold. To foretell, to predict. And that lovely word we had was seamless and seamlessly. If you can translate seamlessly, you can do it without any issues, without any problems. You do it flawlessly. And seamlessly is the adverb, seamless is the adjective. Good. I think that's about enough for now. And given that that is the first one, I'm going to close that document and we're going to move on to the second article. Decisions. Which one shall I go for? Let me go for this one. And at the end of last week's podcast, and maybe at the beginning of last week's podcast, while discussing crime, I was a little bit political. And I know some people, they say you should keep politics out of language learning. And maybe they're right. But as I said, I like to be honest and truthful and talk about real things. So, of course, I'm going to show you how I feel about certain political matters, but If you disagree, that's absolutely fine. And I think that should be encouraged. So if you disagree, let me know and let's discuss it. Because that way, you can understand me, I can understand you, and the world becomes less polarized. So let me share my screen once again. And the title is as follows. UK opposition party spells Britain incorrectly. It sounds like a joke, right? It sounds too ridiculous to be true. But no, it's true. So let me repeat. UK opposition party spells Britain incorrectly. And when I say a UK opposition party, I mean the party that is not in government at the moment. The current government is the Labour Party, led by Keir Starmer. He's the Prime Minister. And the historical opposition, and usually the government, is the Conservative Party, also known as the Tories. And historically, they've been centre-right. And historically, Labour have been centre-left. Nowadays, Labour are quite central, and the Tories, the Conservative Party, are becoming more and more right-wing, and they're getting further and further away from the centre. But hey, that's just for your information. Now let me read the article. Ready? Everyone makes spelling mistakes, even with easier words. Earlier this week, the opposition political party in the UK misspelled a word. The Conservative Party made a mistake with the name of its own country. The error was in the slogan on the wrapper of a chocolate bar. The word Britain was spelt Britan on the bar. The message was signed by the party's leader. The Conservatives were holding their annual conference. Each person who attended the event received the bar of chocolate. Organisers of the conference blamed the mistake on a printing error. After they spotted the mistake, they immediately stopped handing out the chocolate. Many people on social media made fun of the mistake. Journalist Natasha Clark wrote on X, formerly Twitter, that the Conservative Party wants to run Britain, but can't spell it. A member of the UK's ruling Labour Party also commented on the spelling mistake. She said the Conservatives can't proofread 5 words on a bar of chocolate. However, it is not the first time that political parties in the UK have had a spelling mishap. Earlier this year, Scottish Labour misspelt the word Scottish on its election leaflets. The handout said, "Your SCOTISH Labour candidate," missing a T. And in 2024, the politician Lee Anderson's surname was incorrectly written as Andersin on his election leaflets. So there you have it. British politicians are unable to spell Britain. And Scottish politicians are unable to spell Scottish. And this is not limited to different sides of the political spectre, because the Tories, the Conservative Party, is right-wing. They misspelt it. And the Scottish Labour, left-wing, misspelt it as well. So they're all idiots. Like most politicians, I suppose. Everybody dislikes politicians, I assume. But that's the story. It's a little bit funny. It's a little bit ridiculous at the same time that they are unable to spell the name of the country, which of course is a bit embarrassing. But mistakes happen, and you learn from your mistake. We're all human. And with language learning, of course, whenever you do make a mistake, you should learn from that mistake, embrace that mistake, and that way it'll be more memorable the next time you want to correctly say that phrase, and you'll think, oh no, make sure I don't say Britian and I say Britain, for example. Because for me, one of the most useful things with having English classes or conversations with other people speaking English is the possibility to express yourself, communicate, and make mistakes. Because if you don't make the mistake, then you don't know where your weaknesses lie. But through conversation and communication, you can find out what weaknesses you might have, and you can work out how to correct them. So that's beside the point. But tell me about you. Are you into politics? Do you like the current government of your country? Would you prefer the opposition to be in charge? I'm curious to read, and I do like politics, and I like listening to podcasts about politics as well. The one that I usually listen to is probably the most famous English podcast, which is called The Rest is Politics. So if you are into this, check it out. And I want to know if you're happy with your government, because many people in the United Kingdom are very unhappy with the current government. And a lot of people have been complaining, campaigning, trying to change the government, or at least convince the government to make some other changes. And let's see what happens, because personally, I think that if this government in the United Kingdom, the Labour Party, doesn't do a good job, I would say that the next time we have elections, the scenario will be much worse. Because if people are insatisfied with the current government, they will vote for a very extreme party to take over. And that will, I think, lead to worse consequences. So I hope the current government in the United Kingdom is able to turn things around and improve the situation. But I don't know whether it'll happen or not. So only time will tell. Only time will tell. Let's see. But let's just go over some of the advanced words and phrases from that article. So again, I'll share my screen. And here, a nice verb, to misspell is to spell incorrectly. Like the prefix miss from misunderstand is to understand incorrectly. And then there was an error on the wrapper of a chocolate bar. So often we buy bars of chocolate, and the wrapper is like the cover, the wrapping almost. Moving down, another thing is the phrasal verb handing out. After they saw the mistake, they immediately stopped handing out the chocolate. To hand out is like to give or to distribute. You can hand out leaflets. You can hand out homework. Then another thing to highlight is proofread. If you are proofreading something, you are reading something again to make sure that it doesn't contain errors. It doesn't contain mistakes. This is proofreading. And another phrase here was, it's not the first time that political parties in the UK have had a spelling mishap. And a mishap is basically a mistake. It's an error. It's an issue, really. So it wasn't the first time that there has been a similar mishap, a similar error, a similar mistake. So that's it. They cannot even spell our own country. God. Typical. Terrible. Right? Politicians, eh? All right, now the third news article. And let's see, well, if it's interesting. I think it's pretty interesting. And I think it's something that you may have heard before. And I'll give you a clue. It's related to maps. And as you can see from behind me, I like maps. So that's probably one of the reasons why I have chosen this article. And the title, the headline, is Africa calls for map to show continent's true size. And you might be thinking, huh? What do you mean it's true size? Isn't it already correct? It appears not. So let me read the title again, and then I will start with the article. Africa calls for map to show continent's true size. Let's get started. The African Union, AU, has called for an end to a widely used map that shrinks the African continent. The map is called the Mercator projection. It was created by mapmaker Gerardus Mercator in 1569. In the 18th century, it became the international standard for sailors. It is now the world's most widely used map. However, it does not show the true size of different nations. Countries farther away from the equator look larger than they really are, whereas countries closer to the equator appear smaller. The AU is supporting a campaign called Correct the Map. It is also calling for a design that shows the correct size of Africa and of other continents and countries. The deputy chairperson of the AU spoke about the Mercator map. She told Reuters, "It might seem to be just a map, but in reality, it is not." She said the Mercator gave the impression that Africa was less important. She said Africa is the world's second largest continent by area and has more than 1 billion people. The executive director of the non-profit organization, Africa No Filter, agreed. She said the Mercator map was the world's longest misinformation and disinformation campaign, and it just simply has to stop. The group Speak Up Africa wants people to use the 2018 Equal Earth map, on which Africa appears 14 times larger than Greenland, as it actually is. So what do you think about that? That's the end of the article. And has it raised any eyebrows? Has it surprised you in any way? Because it's not the first time that I've heard this. I think I heard it a few years ago, that the map that we all see isn't actually that accurate. And let me just recap what the information and the article was saying. The article was stating that countries around the center, near to the equator, appear to be much smaller than they actually are on this map. And countries that are nearer to the North Pole or the South Pole appear to be much bigger on the map than they actually are. And they made this comparison between Africa and Greenland, which Greenland, when you look on a map, it looks huge, it looks enormous, and it's a pretty big country, of course. But the article states that the continent, Africa, is in reality 14 times bigger than Greenland. Now, if you look at any map, you'll see that Greenland looks maybe a third of the size of Africa, maybe a quarter. But in reality, the true dimensions are that Greenland is 1/14 of Africa. So you got a feel for many Africans and many people supporting this campaign because it is misinformation. And Africa should appear to be much bigger on the map because, I suppose you want true, real information. You want to receive real information. You don't want to be told lies. And with this, it might not be such a harmful lie or such a dangerous lie, but it still is kind of a lie. And if we think about other countries like, I don't know, Brazil, there is a part of Brazil which is basically on the equator. So that means that Brazil is actually bigger than it appears on the map. And the same thing could happen for countries that are along the equator. So, personally, I don't think it's such a big deal. Of course, I'm giving you my opinions and going over the information, but a map is a map, really. And just because it seems much smaller than it actually is, I don't think is the end of the world, because the people in power know how big Africa actually is. But then again, changing it to an updated map isn't going to do any harm to us. So maybe we should support this campaign. What do you reckon? And if there are any of you who are watching or listening to this podcast from an African country, let me know in the comments, because I have been to Africa once, but only for a weekend and only to one city, right in the north of Africa, because I've been to Morocco once, and I went to Morocco 8 years ago, maybe. And I had a great time. It was really nice. People were really friendly. The food was really good. The weather was really nice. And I'd love to travel around the rest of Africa, but I haven't got round to it yet. I haven't had the time yet. And perhaps this is my English bias, but I feel like traveling around Africa is much more complicated than traveling around Europe, Asia, America. But I'd love to visit Kenya, South Africa, Tunisia, Egypt. I'd love to visit so many countries around the world, and Africa is included in that. So hopefully I'll have the time to do it in the future. But hey, I think that's it. And I think that is a good way to finish off for today. And if you'd like me to continue this format of the podcast, let me know, because it's not too much trouble. And if you'd like me to, I can always do a recap of some interesting news articles once every month or 2 months. So let me know. I'm all ears and I'm open to everything. So that's it, folks. Thanks a lot for listening. Don't forget to leave a like. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.